The Independent National Electoral Commission says over 5.4 million Nigerians are on the voter register for November 11 governorship elections in Kogi, Imo, and Bayelsa State. INEC National Commissioner and Chairman, Information and Voter Education Committee, Sam Olumekun, made this known in a statement on Tuesday. Olumekun said in furtherance of INEC's commitment to deepen deployment of technology for voter accreditation and result management, the Commission has finalized preparations for mock accreditation of voters in 3 states to test run the bimodal voter accreditation system and upload of polling unit results to INEC result viewing portal. Well, joining me to talk about these is public affairs and political analyst Opunabo Inko Tariah to talk about these details. Glad to have you join me this afternoon, Tariah. Good afternoon.
Inko Tariah is a compound word.
Inko Tariah, I beg your pardon. Inko Tariah. Now, with all that has transpired so far, how would you rate the electoral body's performance in the last general elections, for instance?
Quite dismal. The problems we are having today, the plethora of cases we have in court, is as a result of the collusion of INEC in the last general elections. We are all Nigerians and we saw what happened. Take, for example, the issue of the uploading of the results in most of the areas, especially in Rivers State where I come from, the presidential election. It is, you can't fathom, it is highly inconceivable that you're able to upload that of the National Assembly election that took place simultaneously with the presidential election. And when it came to the presidential election in Rivers State, it took about 5 days. And in most cases, when the results came out, they were mutilated. You cannot really decipher what the figures were. So it's a collusion between INEC and certain political parties and persons. Let me put it on record that I'm not a member of any political party, so I'm not going to speak for any political party. I've always said it, that at this stage of my life, I believe in voting for candidates and not necessarily the political parties. Because you cannot throw up an imbecile and expect me to vote for that imbecile. It's not possible. But unfortunately, most of these political parties or persons colluded INEC to ensure that the elections are rigged, especially in Rivers State that I come from. And of course, my friends also told me of what happened in their various states. So the problem is INEC's sincerity in the next coming off-season elections.
Now, talking about INEC's sincerity, how would you, for instance, assess INEC's level of preparedness to make sure that polls coming up are hitch-free and also people's votes actually count?
INEC, if it wants to, can do that. I just pray we're not going to have a rehash of the MC Olomu's case in Lagos, which went viral, where certain persons terrorized, and they came up to say it was just a joke. I mean, that was an expensive joke. But I just pray that INEC this time around, considering the backlash as a result of the last general elections, will just act together and ensure that it conducts a free, fair, and credible election. If you talk of preparedness, INEC is prepared. The elections are not just things that come up every day. They are not things that come up suddenly. They are things that are planned for. And in the last elections, if you remember, they said they got all the monies ready. Festus Okoye, the INEC chairman, promised Nigerians that they were going to upload. And the uploading would take place simultaneously with the voting, so that there won't be any case of misinformation or any case of a situation where Mr. A voted and it was not recorded, or Mr. A did not vote and it was recorded. INEC promised Nigerians that they are taking care of all those things, all those malpractices. That was what they promised Nigerians. But what we saw was the complete opposite of what INEC promised. So in terms of preparedness, INEC is always prepared. Because if you talk of the rural areas, most times we talk of the rural areas, delay in arrival of material, delay in arrival of personnel and so on. I think that is a question of dilatoriness, not just delay. What is dilatoriness? Deliberate acts. And that is the case of dilatoriness, because you saw all these things. There are some places where results were being collected and they are not generating sets. We saw all that in the last general election. What happened to the billions that were voted for INEC? What happened? So you find out that it was a deliberate attempt on the part of INEC to scuttle or rig the elections. That is my conviction. But if you talk of preparedness, if INEC sincerely wants to, of course, because every cover it asked for in the last general election, it was given to INEC. And they kept on promises. But what we saw was a high blood pressure of deceptive rhetoric and an enemy of concrete performance. So preparedness, well, that's why I talk of sincerity. We've gone beyond preparedness to sincerity. The INEC officials must be sincere. They must ensure that how can you come up with your own guidelines and flout your own guidelines?
Right.
And it's so worrisome with the courts. The courts will tell you it is not in the Electoral Act. INEC has a right to choose what you want. But the money was provided. How do you account for the money that was provided for the IRM? How would you account for the money that was provided for the server? In the case of Buhari, and that we also have the same case right now. That, it is INEC has a right to choose. If INEC has a right to choose, then what of the billions voted for that election, voted for that vote? So when you talk of sincerity, when you talk of preparedness, INEC is always prepared. But when you talk of sincerity, INEC is not sincere.
All right. Now, Mr. Inko Tariah, you mentioned something very significant. You talked about rural areas, areas far off to reach in the hitherlands. What would you like to see in place for INEC in conducting elections in these far off areas, rural areas, like you rightly pointed out?
Those riverine areas are not too difficult. I mean, example, in River State, in Bayelsa State, and so on, or old River State and now Bayelsa. Elections have always been conducted in those areas, right from the time of 1978 to 79, the days of Shagari, the days of Okil, Medford, Okil, and so. Now, what happened those days? They waited because most of these INEC officials were scared. They didn't want to cross the seas. So they waited for people to go and get the results. And so you find out that the results are determined by votes from those hinterlands. But now the INEC has votes, it has everything. If you're really worried, if the INEC, for example, the INEC chairman is scared of crossing the seas, no problem about that. I mean, you can't force him to do so. But there are also persons who are not scared. There are also swimmers. Don't they have swimmers in INEC? They have swimmers in INEC. So if A is scared, then they invoke the service of Mr. B, who is not scared to cross. But they'll use that as an example. That's why I say it's a specious reason. Because, okay, how did the materials get to those areas? Are you telling that people in those hinterlands will not vote or their votes will not count? Why eventually are you getting the votes from those areas? How did they get the votes from those areas? So they have to plan ahead of time. So because they failed or deliberately refused to plan, they use that as an excuse. That's why I say it's a special system. There is no excuse whatsoever right now.
Okay, let me move quickly. All right, let me move quickly because I have a couple of questions still for you, and we have, we're pressed for time. Now, upcoming elections in places like Kogi, Imo, and Bayelsa states, certain states, are flashpoints. What can INEC do to tackle, for instance, voter apathy for fear of violence?
Well, in that case, it's a little bit convoluted. Why I say it's a little bit convoluted? Because no matter the assurances you give to me, if I perceive that the place is precarious, it's not safe for me, I will not go. And like I said, in the last general elections, we had the issue of the MC Opunabo and Co., and nothing happened. They reigned with impunity. What we saw was terrorism. Most of them just did that with impunity. There was no penalty for anything. Once there is no deterrent and there is no penalty, then the evil will continue to prevail. But if there are deterrents, if certain persons have been locked up as a result of the last general elections, others will, they say when the toad in front falls into a pit, others take caution. Others will be careful. They will know that if I do this, I'll go in for it. But because they have certain persons in high places and they know that they can go away with the crime and even the fruits of the crime, then they will continue to reign supreme. That is the problem. So if you talk of the police, it also boils down to the president, the commander-in-chief. Yes, they said the police, the civil defense and co should work with INEC. If INEC chairman is also very serious, and if the police also understands that the INEC chairman is very serious, of course the police will sit up. Same with the president and commander-in-chief. If he gives an order to the IG that if the police misbehaves in any area and the IG does not carry out disciplinary action against that police officer, like what happened to the lawyer that was killed and this ASP has been sentenced to death, that if anything happens and the police is held responsible, is culpable, or is found lacking in the discharge of his duty, that the IG will go if no disciplinary action is taken against such an officer, then I'll tell you the police will sit up. So it's not a question of INEC is not in charge of the police, it's not in charge of the security forces, therefore there's nothing, their hands are fettered. No, I don't agree with that.
Okay.
The INEC chairman, that's why he has to sit with the CNC and agree with the CNC on what to do and the IG on what to do.
Okay, it's a fine place to leave it. Thank you for your insight. Public affairs analyst and as well as political analyst, Mr. Opunabo Inko Tariah. Thank you for your insight this afternoon.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure.